Sarah sat in the darkness of her motel room, her mind racing as she stared at the screen. The name Nathaniel Kane had dominated her thoughts for hours. His absence from public records, no birth certificate, no social security number, felt like a riddle she had to solve. Yet, from the files Daniel had left behind, it was clear. Nathaniel Kane wasn't just a ghost. He was the one in control of everything. The room was eerily quiet. The only sound was the soft hum of the overhead fan, spinning lazily above her head. Sarah's eyes flickered from the screen to the open window. The cool night air helped clear her mind, but not enough to quell the knot forming in her stomach. The more she dug, the deeper she sank into a web of lies. If Kane truly controlled everything, Sarah knew that finding him was not just about uncovering his secrets. It was about surviving long enough to expose him. But men like Kane didn't want to be found, and Sarah had learned the hard way that the deeper you dug into their world, the more dangerous it became. She had to start somewhere. One name stood out among the chaos. Eleanor Price, a former FBI analyst who had vanished years ago after attempting to go public with damning information. Officially, Eleanor's death was ruled as a suicide, but Sarah didn't buy it. No one who had tried to expose Kane's operations ended up dead by their own hand. Eleanor had been silenced. But the more Sarah thought about it, the more she realized there was a chance Eleanor was still alive. With a sense of urgency, Sarah scoured every corner of the web. The deeper she went, the more she uncovered about Eleanor's role in tracking classified financial transactions for covert FBI operations. She had been directly involved with Nathaniel Kane. And one day she vanished. But there was one clue Sarah couldn't ignore. A $500 withdrawal from Eleanor's account, made just 5 days ago, at a gas station in rural Colorado. Her pulse quickened. If Eleanor was alive, she was the only person who could help take down Kane. Sarah didn't waste another second. She packed her bags, grabbed her burner phone, and drove through the night. This wasn't just about answers anymore. This was about survival. Every mile she drove felt like another step closer to finding Eleanor, and to uncovering the full extent of Kane's operations. By the time the first light of day broke over the horizon, Sarah had crossed into Colorado. The small diner just outside the town where Eleanor's bank transaction had been made felt like a good place to start. As she sipped her coffee, her senses were on high alert. The familiar itch at the back of her neck made her uneasy. She wasn't alone. A man sat behind her in the booth, staring at her with an unsettling intensity. He wasn't eating. He wasn't drinking. He was watching. It didn't take long for Sarah to realize. This wasn't a coincidence. Her grip tightened around her coffee mug. This was it. Her worst fear had come true. Kane's men had found her. But she wasn't going to make it easy for them. With quick thinking, Sarah knocked the cup over, spilling the hot liquid across the table. The waitress rushed over, creating the distraction she needed. In one fluid motion, Sarah grabbed her bag, slipped out of the booth, and disappeared through the back exit. She cut through the alleyways, moving fast and staying in the shadows. By the time the man emerged from the diner, she was already in her car, driving toward the gas station where Eleanor had withdrawn the money. Sarah wasn't sure what she expected, but the gas station wasn't what she had imagined. The cashier, a young guy who barely looked old enough to drive, barely glanced up from his phone as Sarah approached. She slid a $50 bill across the counter. "I'm looking for a woman," Sarah said, keeping her voice calm. Late 40s, came in a few days ago, looked nervous, used the ATM. The kid's eyes flicked to the money, then back to her. For a moment, Sarah thought he might refuse. But then he nodded. "Yeah, I saw her," he said, his voice low. "She asked for directions to an old cabin up in the mountains. No one rents it out. Just, one of those places people go to disappear." A chill ran through Sarah. Eleanor was off the grid. The hunt had officially begun. Hours later, Sarah's car bounced down a dirt road, weaving through trees and thick underbrush. The sun was setting, casting long shadows in the woods. She checked her gun. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Finally, she saw the cabin. A small, dilapidated building tucked away in the trees. The sight of it sent a shiver down her spine. She parked the car, grabbed her gun, and made her way toward the door. Knocking twice, Sarah waited. Silence answered. She knocked again. Still nothing. Her fingers tightened around the door handle, and she turned it. It opened. Inside, a woman sat hunched in the corner, her eyes wide, a gun lying loosely in her lap. It was Eleanor Price. Sarah lowered her own weapon. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said softly. Eleanor's hands trembled as she slowly raised her eyes. "Then why are you here?" Sarah took a step forward, her voice unwavering. "Because Daniel Cross died trying to expose the truth. And I need your help to finish what he started." Eleanor's eyes darted to the window, her face pale. "You don't understand what you're asking." Sarah took another step. "They'll kill me? They've already tried. But I'm not stopping until I bring Kane down." Eleanor exhaled shakily, standing to retrieve a hidden file from the bookshelf. She handed it to Sarah. Inside was a single photograph. Nathaniel Kane standing next to a man Sarah never expected to see. Daniel Cross. Alive. Her stomach dropped. Daniel wasn't dead. He hadn't been on the run. He'd been working with Kane all along. For a moment, Sarah could barely breathe. Everything she thought she knew about Daniel, the man she had loved, had just been shattered. He had been part of the very system she had spent so long trying to expose. He was no victim. He was the ultimate betrayer. Eleanor's voice broke through the silence. "It's not what you think." Daniel was pulled back in. "He's playing Kane from the inside." "Playing Kane?" Sarah's voice was thick with disbelief. Eleanor nodded. "He's the only one who can take him down from within." Just then, movement outside the cabin caught Sarah's eye. A black SUV had pulled up. "They found us," Sarah said, grabbing Eleanor by the arm. "We need to go. Now." Bullets tore through the trees as they ran. The sound of footsteps grew closer. Sarah yanked Eleanor behind a fallen log, breathless, trying to think of their next move. It wasn't long before they were cornered. Gunfire rang out, and Sarah pulled Eleanor toward the edge of the woods. But the SUVs were closing in fast. She knew what was coming. They had only one option left. "We're making our stand here," Sarah said, her voice cold with determination. Daniel, who had been silent for most of the escape, pulled a detonator from his vest. "Let's finish this." With a single press of a button, the ground shook. Explosions rippled through the trees, rocks, dirt, and trees collapsing in a cascade of destruction. Kane's men were thrown into disarray, but it wasn't enough to stop them. "We need to go," Daniel urged, but Sarah's resolve had hardened. They were done running. A rusted old pickup truck sat hidden in the trees. Daniel hotwired it as Sarah, Eleanor, and he jumped in. Just as they pulled onto the road, black SUVs appeared, their headlights blinding in the dark. Gunfire erupted. A bullet smashed through the windshield. Sarah threw herself down, grabbing her gun. As the SUV followed in pursuit, Sarah made her move. She was done being chased. She slammed the truck into a turn, driving straight off the road, careening through the fence that marked the perimeter of the facility. They flew down the mountain, heartbeats pounding in their chests. When they finally reached the gas station, Daniel connected the USB drive. Inside the files, Sarah found a chilling video, one she was not ready to see. It was her face on the screen. But it wasn't just a security video. It was a message from her past self. "I failed," the woman on the screen whispered. "Kane rewrites people. He erases memories and turns them into operatives who don't even know they're working for him." A sick realization hit Sarah like a tidal wave. She had been part of the program all along. She had been erased, rewritten. The woman on the screen was her, the Sarah Cross who had once worked for Kane. The shocking truth was clear now. She wasn't just chasing Kane. She was one of his creations. The confrontation with Kane was inevitable. They had reached the heart of his empire. Inside the remote psychiatric facility where the program had been carried out, Sarah faced the man who had rewritten her life. The facility was sterile. It felt like a factory with rows of failed experiments, people who had been rewritten one too many times. Sarah found herself staring at her own name on the list. She had been part of the system all along. As she confronted Kane, the pieces of her past began to fall into place. She wasn't the first Sarah Cross. She wouldn't be the last. In the final moments, Sarah took action. She fired the shot that ended Kane's reign of terror. Kane fell, and Sarah, for the first time in years, was free. But the truth would not let her go so easily. As she walked away, she knew there were still questions left unanswered. But she also knew one thing for certain. The past didn't define her anymore. It was time for Sarah Cross to rewrite her future.